Good day and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I will show you how to use Aspen HYSYS to perform cost analysis on your model, right? So in the simulation environment, you have a ribbon called economics, right? Economics, right? In this ribbon, you can do economic analysis on your model, right? So the first thing you want to do is to activate economics. So to do that, you click on the tick box, you click on it to activate it before you start your economic analysis. So here in the economics tab, there are some parameters. You would have to specify their values in order for Aspen HYSYS to do the necessary economic calculations. Yeah. So before you even start your economic analysis, the first thing you want to do is to identify the prices of all the components involved in that process. Right, identify their prices. So for your feed, for example, you have certain components in your feed. You have these components, compounds, right, elements. So you want to research about their prices per kg, right? Most of the time you have their prices per kg online. It's easy to find it online, right? The prices of components per kg. So you can use per kg. Sometimes you can use the volume as well, right? The cost per volume depending on the unit that is being used. So but the issue is the prices of these substances are usually relative depending on the country you are browsing with respect to. Right? So that is why I will not be involving myself in the determination of the cost prices of each of these components, right? But you will need such information before you start economic analysis of your process, right? So you have to do research about the costing or the cost per kg of your components, right? Because you will need such information to specify stream prices, right? So that's the first thing you do. You do research to determine the cost of each component in your process, right? So once you activate your economics, you will do some preliminary specification, which includes specifying stream prices and then cost options. Now for cost options, if you click on it, you have a section where you are supposed to specify the template you want to use for that particular cost analysis, right? In this version, you have only one template, which is the US template, right? Now what the template does is HYSYS draws data from the template in order to do the cost calculations, right? So in this case, in the economic analysis using the software, you will not be specifying, for example, you would not be specifying prices of say your equipment, right? So it's HYSYS that will be providing such values, right? So it is from this template that it gets such data from, right? So you just specify your stream prices and then it specifies other prices for different cost parameters, right, from the template. So but in this case we only have the US template present, right? Older versions have a couple of other templates, but here you just have the US template, so we are not going to change that. So we are leaving that the way it is. Then you have your scenario, right? So a particular cost analysis you do in a project or in a simulation is called a scenario, right? So if you do a cost analysis on a model, it's called a scenario. If you do multiple, you have multiple scenarios. Then you have description. So you can type the description of that particular model or what you want to achieve with that cost analysis. You can type it here in the description box. So for the investment options, you have the operating life of the plant, then you have the length of plant startup, then you have start of basic engineering and operational year, right? Like I said earlier, at the beginning of the video. All these parameters, you would have to research about them before specifying them, right? So you are not going to be making assumptions, but in this tutorial, I'll just make some assumptions, right, to illustrate how to actually do economic analysis, right? So these values I am specifying now are assumptions, right? Now, for operating life of the plant, that signifies how long the plant is supposed to last before shut down or a renovation or refurbishment, right? So for that, I will make use of 25 years. Then for length of plant startup, I will make an assumption of 2.5 years. 2.5 years. Then for the start of basic engineering, I'm going to use a proposed start date for the plant. So I will use 1st of January. Okay, let's use next year. So all these are assumptions that I'm making right now. Right? So when you are done specifying these costing options, you can exit. Right? You can just exit it. The operational year can be left at 8766 hours. Right? So you just exit it. Now, when you exit that, you can now specify your stream price. Now, for your models, right, when you are specifying stream prices, you are specifying only the prices of your inlet stream, that is the inlet to the process and the outlet to the environment, right? You are not to specify the prices of intermediate streams, right? You are not to specify the prices of intermediate streams. So when you go to stream price, you click on it. Right. When you click on it, it opens an environment where you find all the streams, right? All of them, right? Both the inlets, the outlet, and the intermediate, right? But what you will do is you click on feed stream and you specify the stream prices of your feed streams, right? These are streams that enter the model from the environment, right? Then you specify your product streams as well, and you leave the rest, right? You don't specify intermediate streams. So you come over from here, you go to your feed stream directly and you specify it. You specify your product stream and you are good, right? So for feed stream, you can specify your stream price basis, right? Personally, I like to use mass flow. I prefer mass flow, right, for stream price basis because it's easy to find the cost per kg of substances. Then you specify the stream price of your feed, right? So sorry, so this is I want to use 10, right? So when I use that, I press enter. Now we have the mass flow. Now the prices, right? The prices are per dollar, right? So it is $10 per kg, right? Per kg. Mass flow, yes, cost per kg. So it is $10 per kg, and it is dollar because we are using the US template, right? The US template. Then for the stream price of the products, I still want to use mass flow as my basis, and then I enter the product values, so 50 and 50. Now, like I said before, these values I'm entering are assumptions, right? They are assumptions. So you want to do your research to get the actual values of each component in the stream and use it to determine your stream price, right, for the product and the feed streams, right? So that's it. So you have your stream prices. So once you are done specifying this, you have specified the preliminary parameters you need to specify before the actual economic analysis starts, right? So now for the economics, the first thing you need to do is to map your equipment, right? So we can exit this. you can exit these costing options. So the first thing is to map your equipment, then you size it, and then you evaluate, right? When you are done with this tree, you should have a tick box in this activation bar for economics, right? You should be having a tick mark by the time you are done, right? So the warning sign signifies an incomplete analysis or an error in sizing, right? So when you have sizing errors, you would see the warning sign, or when you have not completed your analysis, you would see the warning sign, right? So the first thing you want to do is to map your equipment. So you click on map. You click on map. So when you click on map, this map options comes up, right? Map option comes up. So you have source. You can leave it at map all unit operations, right? It makes it easier. You map all unit operations. Then for basis, you would have it at default, right? Because this is the first time you are mapping this model, right? But when you are mapping it again subsequently, it will be on last mapping, right? Now, so it's on default. You click OK, and then it brings you to this environment, which is the map preview, right? So this map preview shows you what each equipment in the model is represented as, right? So now, for example, we have a heater in our model, right? We have a heater which is E101, right? E101. So now that heater is represented as a thermal shell and tube heat exchanger, right? A thermal shell and tube. Actually, you can change it to other equipments, right? So what this representation does is it helps you represent your model equipment adequately while the costing is taking place, right? So for example, in cases where you used a heater, right, but the temperature difference is high, right, you can map that heater as a furnace, right, so that it will be properly sized while this economic analysis is taking place, right? So you have your model equipment, right? The model equipment, that's the equipment in your simulation, and then you have what they are represented as in that particular economic analysis, right? So sometimes what you have in your model can be the same as what you have in the mapping, and other times it may be different, right? So now this mapping is very important, especially when you are dealing with sizing errors, right? If you are having sizing errors, sometimes mapping your equipment adequately will help to resolve those errors, right? So when you are done mapping, you click on OK, right? But if you want to map, for example, if I want to map this E101, let me see, is it a heater or a cooler? Let me check. 104. From what I'm seeing, okay, it's actually a cooler. It's a cooler. There's no heater in this particular model. Okay, let's go back to map again. Let me just explain what I mean by mapping properly. So for example, if you wanted to map this heat exchanger as a furnace, right, what you need to do is you come to the drop down and then you click on it. Then you can now choose whichever group of equipment you want to map that particular equipment as. For example, I want to map this heater as a furnace. I go to heat exchangers and heaters, then I click OK, right? Then I click furnace, I click OK, then I can change it to any of the furnace types and click OK, right? So now I have mapped this particular heater as a furnace. It is no longer a thermal shell and tube, right? It is no longer a thermal shell and tube. And this particular mapping process is very important in equipment sizing, right? So, but I will change it back to the default. Okay. Yeah, heat exchanger. Yes. This was where it was before, right? I don't want to map it, right? So when you are done mapping your equipment, you click on OK, right? So you click on OK, then you see that the mapping has changed. It has been ticked that it has been done, right? So the next thing is equipment sizing, right? And to do that, you click on the sizing, you click on it, right? Now, when you are sizing your equipment for economic analysis, you need to allow HYSYS size the equipment for you. That is called auto sizing, right? You don't size manually, right? There is an option to size manually in your home tab. You can actually size equipment from this equipment design, but when you are doing economic analysis, you size with the sizing of economics, right? You use the HYSYS auto sizing to size your model, right? So it automatically sizes all the equipment in the model just by clicking on this, right? When you are done with the sizing, you click on evaluate, right? Now, when you click on evaluate, the costing calculations are done by the software based on the preliminary values you specified in the stream price, cost options, and the rest, right? So you just click on evaluate. Yes, so you click on evaluate, and once you click evaluate, the calculations are done, and you can check them by clicking on view equipment, right? View equipment. So I want to click on evaluate again so that all the values come up. Let me see. Okay. Yes. So now we have this, right? Now you see that the costing parameters, their values have been specified as determined by the software, right? So you have your total capital cost, operating cost, raw materials, product sales, utilities cost, desired rate of return, payback period, equipment cost, installed cost. You have their values specified, right? But we have a slight issue. We have a warning here. The warning sign is still appearing, right? So it means there are probably sizing errors in this model, right? There are sizing errors in this model. So what you do is, when you are seeing this after you have evaluated your model, what you need to do is to go to the equipment section of this equipment data summary, right? You click on equipment. Yes. So if there are sizing errors, evaluation errors, you will find them right here, right? So we have errors with the LNG exchanger. From our model, we had an LNG exchanger, so we have errors from there. We also have errors from a condenser as well, right? So these errors, HYSYS will give you information about what you need to change, right? So that those errors can be resolved. So you would have to read and understand the message, the error message, what the error message is trying to say, right? So from here, you have for the LNG, you have core length, core width, then core height. They are all not specified. According to HYSYS, they are not specified. They need to be specified. Then for condenser, you have surface area. It says either surface area or number of tubes must be specified, right? So I'll be correcting some of these errors, right, so that you would understand how it works. So if you want to correct this one, all you need to do is click on this and it takes you to the equipment directly, right? So it says we should specify transfer area or number of tubes, and according to what I see here, transfer area is already specified because the software did sizing on each of the equipment, as I said earlier. So I will just specify number of tubes, right? Now, as I always say, this is an assumption, so it's not so I will specify the number of tubes, right, for this. And then for the LNG, we'll go to the LNG to make specifications. Okay, so for LNG, we have core length, core width, and core height. So I will just make assumptions for 3 of them, right? I will make assumptions for 3 of them. And then core height, you have 1. So we are done making changes based on the suggestions HYSYS has given, right? So what you do is you go back to your economics tab and then you resize your equipment, right? After you had made changes to the sizing, you can resize it, right? When you now resize it, you can evaluate once again to see if the error clears. So after sizing again, sizing when we had already made the corrections, you will see that we don't have the error message on this equipment again. Then we can now evaluate. I just want to disgrace me. I'm doing video. Okay, for the LNG exchanger, we will make adjustments to the core length, core width, and core height. And as I said, these values I'm using are just assumptions, right? They are just assumptions. Core length, core length, then core width 0.5, then core height is 2. Yes, so then we will go back to economics and then we will resize the equipment. Yes, then we will evaluate. Why this one they do like this? So for the LNG exchanger, we will make adjustments to the core length, the width, and the height. Right now, these values I'm about to use are assumptions, right? So just for illustration, then 0.5, right? So after that, we now evaluate the equipment again. We evaluate it so that HYSYS does the calculations once again, and you see this time around you have the tick mark, right? So in this case, there are no longer any sizing errors in this particular model, right, for this economic analysis. Now we have successfully done the economic analysis of this model, right? This model on the screen, right? And these are the values of the economic parameters. You have them and their values. If you want to export all these data that are present here, you can do that by clicking on send to Excel, right? And all the data is exported automatically to the Microsoft Excel software, right? You can then do further analysis in that software if you want to, right? And then you can make inference from the data. So that's how it works. Now, coming back to the equipment. Now, in the equipment, this is the equipment section of the of our model, right? This is the equipment section, either the unit operation or the equipment, right? Either one of them. So you have the equipment here. Now in this equipment section, you notice that the prices of some of the equipment are 0, right? Some of them are 0. Now okay, now for valves, you have valves at 0, right? There are some equipment in the object palette, the model palette. There are some equipment in the model palette that cannot be costed by HYSYS, and one of them you have is the valves. So valves are not costed by HYSYS. Then the component splitters as well, right? The component splitters are not costed by HYSYS. Fired heaters are not costed by HYSYS. A few other equipment in the palette are not costed by HYSYS, right? So you have to take note of that. You would have to put that into consideration when you are using the economics of the software, right? You have to consider that when you are using it, and their values cannot be manipulated from here, right? You cannot manipulate their values. If you have to attach values to those equipment, it would have to be after you have exported to Microsoft Excel. You cannot manipulate cost prices of equipment from the Aspen HYSYS software, right? You can't do that. Even for Aspen Plus as well, you cannot manipulate cost prices of equipment, right? So for valve you have 0, for mixer you have 0, but for mixer you can actually do something about it. For mixer, you can go and map your mixer from here. You can map your mixer. Let's do some mapping for this mixer so that the price of the mixer can be specified. Now you see, as I want to do a new mapping, you see that the last mapping is highlighted, right? Because I have mapped before, so it's not a default, right? So I click on OK, and then for the mixer, I will change the mixer equipment. I will change it from the mapping section to agitated tank, right? So I want to map the mixer as an agitated tank, so I click on this guy, the agitators, and then I click OK, right? So I use the agitated tank and I click OK, and then I use enclosed, right? Enclosed agitated tank for the mixer, right? So the mixer is represented as a tank, an enclosed agitated tank, right? That is where the mixing will take place, right? So this economics will be based on the agitated tank for the mixer, right? So I click on OK, and then I click on OK, right? Then I go back to the economics tab. The mapping has been done, so I have to resize again, right? And then evaluate. Okay, it says vessel capacity cannot be calculated. Okay, let's go and check that. So after mapping the mixer as an agitated tank, I got a sizing error, right? So I want to map it to another kind of mixer to see if the error will clear, right? So I will try another mixer for the mix, right? So I'm trying to map the mixer correctly so that the price of the mixer will be specified, right? Initially the price of the mixer was specified as 0, right? Because it was not mapped, right? So now I'm changing it to another kind of mixer. So in this case I'll use a static mixer and we'll see how it goes, right? So I'm clicking on this, right? So I'm mapping it as a static mixer. I'm mapping the mixer as a static mixer. Then I click OK. Then I go back to size the equipment again, right? So to size it, you just click on size. Yeah. And then it has sized it, right? So on sizing it, then we click on evaluate to see if we are able to correct the error. Let's see if we are able. Okay, we are not able to correct the error. Now, let me see. Okay, for mixer, you have specified capacity or diameter and length, right? The other error we have here is the LNG, of which we have already resolved before, so we can easily work on that one. But the mixer now, we are trying to get an equipment cost for the mixer, And the only way we can do that is to appropriately map the mixer, right? But note that this mapping doesn't work for valves, right? You cannot map valves. HYSYS does not cost valves, right? HYSYS does not cost valves, but the mapping can work for other equipment, right? And still yet, there are some equipments that HYSYS does not cost, right? So you have to watch out for all these things because they will come into play when you are doing the economic analysis. So now let's see what specifying the diameter and length will do to this mixer. So we specify diameter and length, right? So we have pipe diameter and length. I'll just use, and then pipe diameter I will use so all these values are still assumptions, like I always say. So we have specified this. Now let's also make changes to the LNG exchanger as well. The changes we made to it before, right? LNG, just click on it and edit those parameters once again. Just edit them quickly, 0.5 and 2. Yes. So after making changes to this, we can resize the equipment, right? So after resizing, we now click on evaluate, right? To evaluate based on the changes we have made. So the whole evaluation, the cost analysis will be done again, and we have the tick mark evaluated. Now we can go back to the equipment. Yeah, the equipment actually. Now you will see that the price of the mixer has now been inputted in the process, right? So the mixer was 0 initially, but now the values of the cost of the mixer has been added to the cost analysis, right? If you check it in the unit operation, you will also find it there, right? So that's it. So the proper mapping of equipment can also work on sizing errors, and it can specify or help HYSYS be able to specify the equipment cost of that particular equipment. And that is why mapping is very important, right? So mapping can help you solve your sizing errors and then specify equipment cost, right? Also, the major way to solve, because when you are doing economic analysis, you will be working with different kinds of equipment for different processes, and you will be getting different sizing errors, right? Different sizing errors that you have not even seen in this video, right? So the best way to work on those sizing errors is to follow the hints that you will be getting from the sizing error column and the evaluation error columns, right? So you read those messages, the sizing error messages from these two columns, you try to understand them, and then you make changes that are necessary, you make the changes that are required, and then you evaluate your process after those changes have been made to see if the errors can be corrected, right? So at this point, we have come to the end of this particular tutorial, right? And this is our summary, right? This is our summary. All these columns can be exported using this bar send to Excel ASW, right? You can export all this data to Excel if you like, right? So we have come to the end of this particular lecture. If you have comments or questions on economic analysis, kindly send them using the comment section. I would like to hear from you. Subscribe to this channel if you have not done so yet for future notifications on process design. Thank you for joining me. Do have a good day.